We have a quorum. We'll call a planning board meeting to order. There's 4 of us here. Mr. Dwyer will not be attending. First up for general information is M. Gear. Are you there?
Yes, I'm just learning how to use Zoom. Okay.
You're waiting for what?
I just was learning how to use Zoom.
What
You
does
can-
M
well-
stand? What's your whole name?
Maureen Geyer, M-A-U-R-E-E-N.
Okay. What, you have,
Dyer.
you have planning board questions?
I have to get approval from you for putting a tank behind the Pride store at 25 Russell Street. And I have my screen to share. One moment.
Do you have to give her?
Yes, permission.
Okay. And this is the this is the cooking oil, right?
This is the cooking oil. Yep. This is the tank that will go behind the store. 62 inches long, 44 inches wide, 68 inches tall. This is where it looks like it's on the outside of the building here.
We're
And the
not
hose
seeing
bundle
your
goes-
screen. I'm not seeing
Oh.
your screen.
Not either.
Sure. Okay. Very sorry.
Here we go.
This is the outdoor tank. You can see the dimensions are right here, 62 by 44 by 68 inches tall. There's all kinds of details there. Here's where it'll be placed outdoors. This is the outdoor. This is the building wall. It goes through the building wall and then over to the fryer.
And that's at the east end of the south side of your building,
Correct. Can you see my screen here?
your permit?
So actually, what you're looking for is a modification for the site plan that was originally proposed. So that's what's before us this evening, I assume.
Right. They just said we need a permission from the planning board to put the tank outdoors.
Where is the address?
25 Russell Street.
Oh,
It's-
25 Russell, okay.
It's the Pride gas station. right?
Okay. Okay.
So
Where I
it's-
go to charge my Tesla.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
Is this the norm for buildings or people with fryer-laters to have these outdoor tanks? And are
Yep,
you,
if they have the room, Mike, they can be, tanks can be indoors, but some of these smaller gas stations don't have room for indoor tanks, so they want to put them in the behind the store.
uh-huh,
I know the sewer department was a little concerned over some people putting some of the grease down into the sewer, so they're probably encouraging something like this.
Well,
So-
Right.
yeah,
I
yeah, you're not,
would
Yeah.
say it's probably a good move and we probably should approve.
Can you show us the site plan? And then I think Tommy has his hand up.
Can you see my site plan?
Not right now.
No,
We're
that's what I
seeing
was
the
actually
permit.
asking for.
all we see is the application.
Well, I don't know why.
Maybe
One
you
moment,
click on
please.
the upper tab, maybe click on what's the RTI? No, that's the equipment. You might have to unshare and then reshare again and click another screen.
Okay. Thank you for your patience with me.
so what is the combustion point temperature-wise for oil? I mean, Willie Nelson burns this stuff in his touring bus, right? Same stuff?
It's just cooking oil. It's class 3B. It won't combust unless the whole building's on fire over 500 degrees.
Thank you. There's the plan. And then there are bollards, what, at each corner or?
Wherever the building commissioner would like us to put them.
Tommy has his hand raised. Please speak, Tommy.
Yeah, Tom, you got a
Yep.
question?
The main thing, Chief Sminknable and I wanted to show you was because it's at the end of the drive-through. So that is where the drive-through. I know the chief will decide where he wants the bollards, and he's going to want. It's actually on a skid now, wooden skid. So he's going to require, speak with them about something different there. But the big thing to just run it by you is mainly because it's in the drive-through. So he will make sure it's protected how he wants it. The bollards, discussing it with them, but that was our big thing to let you guys know.
Okay,
Okay,
so you, the fire chief and you will determine where the bollards you want put?
Yes,
Tom?
sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
all right.
So is there, I guess I've never used the drive-through. Is the drive-through on the east side?
right here.
Okay, all right. Because I thought I saw some window on the west side, but maybe that was original and then abandoned because it's on the other side of the alcohol locker. Yeah. I don't have any problem. I mean, I don't know how you're going to plow and protect it, but I guess that's what the bollards are about.
Okay, you can close your screen. Okay, any other comments?
Nope.
I will make a motion to approve placement of the oil and grease tank at 25 Russell Street, filter unit with bollards to be placed per recommendations of fire chief and building commissioner.
I would second that.
Any other comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with one absent. We'll get an email out to the building inspector, but he's on here right now, so he knows you've been all set. So you can go and apply for permit tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. You too. Rusty Smith.
Present.
Are you here for general information?
No, I'm here to follow up on the permit for Tom Matusco.
Oh, for Valley, for the solar fields. Okay, very good.
Yep.
William Kyle Fennell.
Good evening, board. I'm here with the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Okay, let's see.
More business.
That's not quite 6:45, so we don't want to get into that. I will, it is time for our quarterly payroll. There's quarterly planning board stipend. So I will make a motion to pay for the planning board to approve $575 for the quarterly stipend for the planning board for the period July, August, September 2023.
Second,
Motion and second. Any
Yep.
discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye.
aye,
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with one absent. Do you have anything, Mr. Quinlan? No? Mr.
No, sir.
Reedy, Mr. Reedy was going to be here to ask for a release of the covenants on Adair Way, but he wanted Bill to be here. And just for everybody's information, the Adair Place or Adair Way, whatever it's called, doesn't meet current conditions for acceptance as a town way. There's a lot of cracks have been sealed. They've done a very good job of sealing the street, but there's a lot of cracks, especially around the manholes and drainage basins and stuff like that. And according to the DPW director, he would not recommend approval as a town way in its current condition. We talked to the town council, about releasing the last 3 lots based on that. Town council has recommended that we not release the last 3 lots. They have basically a few choices. One is to get 3 quotes, take the middle quote, and to get 120% bond or surety of some sort on to hold to make sure the road is improved. The other way, and this was something I talked to Tom, we emailed Tom Rady, he says, or we could resurface the road. I said, absolutely, is if you resurface the road and it meets town standards, we could release a lot, and you could go and get approval shortly after that, because there are some houses on it. So he's gonna talk to the landowner of the road and see how they're going to proceed. I just want everybody to know what's going on.
How long ago did they pave that? Like 18, 20 years ago?
About 12 to 13 years ago.
Okay.
They only sold the first houses in 2022, Tom?
Yes, I believe so. And I think
Yeah.
there's 5, I think you've released 5 now, correct? There's 5 sold?
There's 4 houses, there's 2 houses sold. One is for sale, it's actually completed, they had an open house this past weekend. The other one, the 4th one is not far from being complete. And then they have 1 building lot that was sold, I believe, earlier this year, but nothing has happened with that lot yet. So,
Jim, do you recall if there was a final coat put on it? I thought there was just the initial coat. And
I thought there was not a final coat put on it too, but looking at that road, boy, that's a mighty smooth rough coat.
it does look smooth. Okay, so
I'm, I don't dare comment if it is a finished coat or not. If it
Yeah.
isn't a finished coat, then he's got a pretty easy correction there. But if it is a final coat, well, he's got to do what he's got to do, and I don't know what the recommendation would be to make it good. I was going to scarify it or just put another coat on top. I don't know what he would want to do. I don't know the most effective means, cost-effective means to do anything there.
What utilities does he have under the pavement?
He has drainage, oil, not oil. There's no gas on the street. He's got the catch basins, water, electricity, telephone, and cable, all underground.
Okay. And his sewer goes to municipal, or he has some kind of a,
He has part of most of the drain drains towards the back. I don't know if it's some kind of a leaching, whatever field it was. And he was given permission from the town to take, I would say, the front 4 lots maybe, and tie into the drainage ditch over at the corner of across the street from what the old B&M was.
okay.
no, Mark's question, were you talking about sewer or a septic system? Was that or were you talking about drainage?
I was talking about storm drainage. I didn't think that there was a town system there.
No, the sewer doesn't go up that far.
And I would assume they're septic because I used to live on Jim Street and we had septic, so.
Yep.
Yeah, we got where we are, the septic system, the perk tests are super because you put the water in the ground and it basically disappears. You can't keep water in the ground, but if you go a half a mile north of us, when you put water in the ground, it sits there for a week.
This must be some clay.
Amazing the way the glaciers drop the soil around here. But I think Tom's probably right about on the edge of where it's good and bad. So anyways, it is 6:45 and we will start with the administrative reviews of 3 different small ground mounted solar systems. Mr. Matusko, Tom Matusko is first. I believe that is Rusty. You want to
Correct.
explain what's going on?
Sure. So we're just doing a small scale ground mounted solar installation at Tom Matusko's home. This
You
is
can
almost,
share screen if you want.
what's that?
You can share your screen if you get it up on the screen.
Sure. See if I can.
The address?
Address is 112
112
Stockbridge.
Stockbridge.
Yep. Let's go to, this is the site plan for the project. So there's an existing ground mounting system. It's called a tracking system or a tracker. So that's when we installed about 4 years ago. And we're doing a second one just to meet their electrical needs. And this one is just going fairly close to the existing one, but just a little bit to the northwest, a little bit closer to the tobacco barn that's there, and just going through the administrative process. So you should all have access to these packets that we provided to you with all this information.
Okay. It's going to be a tracking system too?
Correct.
These are
Almost
gonna be- these just
Identical to the
post-
existing system.
These will just be post drilled into the ground?
Yes, it'll be a helical screw.
Okay. All right. He decided he likes it, he wants some more? So that's gonna give what, roughly about maybe what, 14 kW?
Yeah, that'll be the nameplate capacity of the system. So combined, the two systems will be 14 kW.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? Anybody?
Nope.
That shouldn't have any negative reflections on, driver's sight on the street.
There is
No,
no
it's-
there is no reflection.
Okay.
It's also barely visible from Stockbridge.
Right.
Yeah, that big tobacco barn hides most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mark, this is on the dead end part of Stockbridge that used to be a road going to UMass, no longer exists.
You're dating yourself, Doc. I can barely remember that one.
Wasn't it called North Hadley Road?
No, North Hadley Road is the present road
Right.
over the bridge.
Oh, okay.
So this dies where the 116 goes through.
Correct. Or you're right.
Okay. I will make a motion that clearing of natural vegetation shall be limited to that which is necessary for the construction, operation, and maintenance of the solar system, and is otherwise prescribed by applicable laws and regulations and ordinances. Soil permeability. There shall be no impervious surfaces in its foundations, footings, or paths between panels. Exceptions are concrete slabs on grade to support electrical switchgear. Solar energy system shall be designed and constructed to optimize the maintenance of any wildlife corridor, should there be any. Solar system shall be set back at least 50 feet from the nearest property line and or private a public way except along Route 47, which is designated a scenic byway, which this is not. On-site solar energy shall be located in backyards and side yards and not front yards or the required front yard. Parking shall be for vehicles shall be parking. Reasonable on-site parking is required for the vehicles which will serve as the solar energy systems. We have electrical schematic, we have the analysis documents, elevation drawings, building schematic, we have a schematic attachment of method for connected to the building of integrated, there's not integrated. Documentation shows the owner of the solar system has liability insurance. Documentation shows the owner has site control. Documentation shows the owner of the solar system has notified the grid. Site control, electrical notifications. Okay, site plan. Property line and physical dimensions of the subject property within contour levels of no more than 10 feet. Location dimensions of the of major existing structures on the property, we have that. Location of the solar system structures, foundations and associated equipment. Right of way, if any, for public roads that is contiguous. Any overhead utility lines, I don't believe there's any. Location and approximate height of tree cover. Property of adjacent parcels within, property lines of adjacent parcels within 300 feet. At least one color photography of the site before improvements, which you have. Solar system specs included manufacturer and model. We have a one-line electrical diagram. You have the contact information of above and the agents and the persons responsible. Maintenance of the solar system, if required. Solar energy tech specs, including manufacturer and model. Implementation review. Copies were submitted to the appropriate town departments. We haven't heard nothing back. Adequacy of the data and methodology used by the applicant to determine the impacts of the proposed development. Effects on proposed development, which are basically minimal, if any. Recommended conditions or remedial measures to accommodate or mitigate expected impacts. There is none. Approval of the site plan is based on a determination that the proposed project will constitute a suitable development and is in compliance with the standards set forth in the bylaw. Approval of the project subject to any conditions, modifications, or restrictions which will ensure that the project meets the standard. Administrative review shall be accompanied by 9 copies, which we had, and subject to other approval of other boards if and as required. That is the motion.
Second.
But can I just ask a quick question of Rusty? Do you know off the top of your head what the highest point is of the existing tracker and what the highest point of the new tracker will be?
Sure, they're identical, and when it's at its maximum tilt, it's at 20 feet.
Okay.
There's going to be a tracking system too?
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
It is. Okay.
And the height of that barn is probably well above 20.
Yeah, it's about 36 feet, I think,
Okay.
maybe 40.
That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0 with 1 absent.
Excellent.
Okay.
Very much. Can I just ask, do we need to make any further movement to receive a permit, or should we reach out to building and electrical department to receive the permit, or is it just going to get?
Well, the building inspector is on the meeting, so we heard us approve this. There is no appeal period because this is not a special permit. So if you want to go down to the, we won't get this typed up for a couple of days because Bill's out.
Yeah.
But he heard us approve it. There's no concerns. So between the building and electrical, you should be able to go down there to the building department tomorrow and start your process.
Perfect. Thank you all very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Take care.
Next one, Valley Solar's got the next 2. So next one, we have 14 Wampanoag, Stanley Brown.
Yep, I'll be representing Valley Solar for that one. And I can share my screen. Moment. All right. All right, so this is at 14 Wampanoag Drive. This is a ground-mounted fixed array with helical piles. Let me just pull this up so I can get the small array. This is 15 panels, 7.2 kilowatts DC. The interesting thing about this array that's different from the last one is our setbacks. We have a 20-foot setback from the side and a 35 from the rear. And 109 feet to the frontage.
What are the significant, what's the significance of a helical pile?
So the helical pile is, in layman's terms, just a ground screw, which means there's no concrete, and it's a relatively simple process. It's just a huge ground screw that goes down. It has the specs on this. I don't.
Looks like a
I don't know
giant wood
exactly.
screw.
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah,
hit
there's
water?
I'm not sure on that. There's a bunch of engineering details on the same plan set that I believe everyone has that shows all those those information. And if you have specific questions, I can definitely answer those down the road. I'll have to get in touch with engineers for some of those, I'm sure. But as far as the size, just to get a sense of the size of this, the panels are 16 feet by 21. The leading edge is going to be within 24 to 30 inches. And on the high end, it's going to be maximum of 10 feet. And I can show you just a street view. This is on the dead end of Wampanoag. There's the house. The array is going back here where you see those bushes from the satellite. And then I also have photos of the site. Here's it staked out. And this is facing south from the array.
Doesn't look like any of the neighbors are here to complain.
No, the only concern would be the rear yard setback.
Yes, so we have signed letters of consent. I'm not sure if the board has received those yet. Let me just that real quick. But this customer got signed letters from the neighbors approving the location.
That's the
Would-
appropriate thing to do, and I applaud you for asking the neighbors. But I'm not sure if the neighbors can give consent. I think the zoning board of appeals would have to give consent. Unless, is there some provision that it can exceed the setback requirement? Do you know, Jim?
I'm trying to get into,
Yeah, I think I was told, Joe, when I went for my variance on my addition, that I could either go in front of the ZBA and get a variance, and that was it. It was done for good. Or I could go get signed letters, but that was susceptible to change in ownership or anything like that. I might have to take it out.
You know, this is a situation where he has the letter, the neighbors don't object, and you know, it's not a dwelling, and it's perhaps it's not going to be intrusive.
Oh, I agree. I agree with that, but also it doesn't want it to be appeared. I know,
No,
I know Jim has said that we can't set precedent. And, you know, if someone else comes in and said, well, you let this guy come in and put him in without the setback, we want to make sure that we're not encouraging this. This is not something that we propose, that we want to make sure that it's known that the neighbors agreed to it and we don't necessarily agree to it. We accept it.
So what are you saying, Mike? Are you saying we should deny it and have them go to the zoning board of appeals, or should we say in this particular case that we are not setting a precedent?
I think that the latter, we're not setting a precedent.
No, I think it's appropriate to just make sure that the proponent is aware that
Correct.
that
And
that
Yep.
it's not a done deal with signed letters, that they somewhere down the road and a butter could, demand that it be removed. But I think with ground screws, that's an easier deal than like when I did foundations on my house. Yes, Tommy.
Yeah, so it's in the solar bylaw, the 20 feet?
I am looking right now.
Because an accessory structure would be 15. And that's,
That's
in the,
the
as far as the building
side.
permit, it's considered a accessory structure on the side and rear. 50 in the
And
front.
on the rear, Tom, too?
Yes, accessory structure, the house would have to be 40.
I
But it
thought it
would
was
be
40.
Well, it's accessory structure, so it'd be 15, 15.
So it's a moot point.
Right.
Unless it's in the solar bylaw, and I never
That's what I'm
saw
looking in the
that.
solar
The 20
bylaw.
feet.
A structure would define that it should be. Okay, we're not gonna get into the semantics.
So unless there's something other, something different in the solar bylaws, they should be all set because they meet the accessory structure.
I agree.
Don't need our ominous warnings.
Yeah. Just because we wrote the bylaw doesn't mean we know what's in it. We don't have it memorized. But, in cases like this, if the engineer peruses it and just says, hey, you're wrong, we can save a little time.
Well, you get into semantics, Mike's, because one particular case was a swimming pool, below ground swimming pool, not above ground. And it was neighbors got into a contest, and it was determined that a swimming pool is a structure and it could not be more than, have to abide by the setback regulations. So
Okay,
I think in this particular case, we should approve it.
yeah.
I don't think we should require the chairman to read
Okay,
the entire litany.
we don't need to.
Okay,
Here we go. Section 28.6.11 setbacks. Solar energy system shall be set back a distance of at least 50 feet from the nearest property line and private or public way except along Route 47, a designated scenic byway, where system shall be set back a distance of at least 100 feet from the principal structure. The planning board may reduce the minimum setback distance as appropriate based on site-specific considerations or written consent of the affected abutters if this project satisfies all other criteria for granting of site plan approval under the provision of this section. There we got it.
There
Very
you go. There you
That-
go.
that planning board had a lot of common sense. I move we approve it.
Okay, so the 35 foot
Harry, I'm at a
and 20 foot that you've got, I don't know if, the only thing I would say, we would make this conditional upon receiving those letters from the abutters.
Understood. Yeah, I believe we've already sent those, but I can send those again. I'll
Okay,
make sure those get sent. Is there,
let
Yeah,
me,
Yeah, it's possible that Mr. Dwyer has them. He's just not here tonight.
Well, it should probably be included in
I would
the
think that it would
package
be,
that
let me,
the
let me,
building
let me
inspector-
check I've got the file of this. Let me see the 14. Planning board. Here it
yeah, I can drop them right now to you if you'd like. Planning.
Yeah. This file is 11 megabytes, so there's 28 pages of goodies here. Let me see, I'm looking for letters.
It's planning at hadleymass.gov still, correct? I know that
Planning at
Yes.
hadleyma.gov, yeah.
hadleyma.gov, right? I know that changed this summer. Yeah, I just emailed those along if they didn't get sent. I know that was my coworker, so I'm not 100% sure, but
Yeah, I think you,
Okay, yeah.
that email is just
the-
monitored by
The
Bill.
letters were not included in the original filing.
correct.
So if you just email them to planning@hadleyma.org, I mean, .gov, then they went to, Bill will have them. And by the time, I mean, I don't doubt that you have them, so don't take it that way. We just want to dot all our i's and check our everything else.
Understood. Yeah, we didn't actually receive all 3 letters until I think it was 3 weeks ago, so that must have been after our initial submission.
Okay,
Yeah. Sorry about that.
no, that's not a problem. Okay, so I hesitate to read everything I just read for the prior one. I will just read the important stuff. That under section 28, approval of the small solar system ground mounted, the permit granting authority shall transmit 1 copy to the appropriate departments. Adequacy of data and methodology used by the applicant to determine the impacts, effects of impacts on development, recommended conditions or remedial measures have all been addressed. Approval of the site plan based on the determination that the proposed project will constitute a suitable development and is in compliance with the standards set forth in the bylaw. Approval of the project subject to any conditions, modifications, and restrictions which will ensure that the project meets the standards for review, subject to approval of any other board if and as required. The administrative review shall be accompanied by, okay, I've already did that. All right, so that would basically be the motion, and by the time we get this typed up, I'm sure Mr. Dwyer is supposed to be back on Thursday. Then he'll be able to get those letters and verify that the letters of the abutters. I would give you my email to send it to me right now, but I don't want to give that out over because we're on public recording. I don't want it to go on YouTube any more than it needs to be. I got enough of bad junk mail. So,
Understood.
okay, so that is the motion. There a second?
It,
There was a motion, a second? Okay. Okay, the motion and a second, all in favor? Aye.
I,
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0-1 with 1 absent. Okay.
Thank you,
And
Justin.
the next one, now we have 14 Hockenham Road.
All right, so this is for 14 Hockenham Road, which is the Peterfrund residence. This is a little bit different in that it's a tracker system, very similar to the one that Northeast presented earlier. This has the same height of maximum of 20 feet when the array is fully vertical, or as vertical as it can get. This is 8 kilowatt system. This one, the setbacks are a lot more straightforward. We have well over 50-foot setback from every side of the array, and we are well down a driveway, not visible from the road.
How many panels?
This is 20 panels.
20 panels.
So it's a 4x5 tracker.
Okay,
And you can see these setbacks. I don't know if you can see the small writing, but the smallest setback is 233 feet. But there's a 540 and a 477. So we're, according to solar bylaws, we're well within standards there. The other difference with this project is we have in the plan set, you see a detail on the structure. This is a precast system filled with concrete and with a riser. So this is a little bit different than a helical pile.
Just as a comment, that's not permitted.
Not permitted at all. Okay.
Concrete is not permitted.
So any concrete as part of the structure.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, only concrete permitted is the one underneath the electrical pads and stuff. But a concrete around the post like that is not permitted.
Okay. So just associated with staging the electrical equipment.
Correct.
All right. So I can get a modification of this engineering stamped for a helical pile version of this tracker. As far as how we should proceed then in terms of the zoning board, I can get you a revision of that plan set. And then do we want to reschedule, or is there any other
Well,
aspects of this
why don't we
project?
go over this just to make sure we got everything else covered? And if you just come back with the stuff that's that doesn't have the concrete pad in there, you'll be all set. It'll be a very quick review.
Understood. Okay. Yeah, so this is let's see, here we go. Here's a helpful satellite view. You can see Hokenham Road, and this very long driveway. And it's right on the other side of the driveway. You have a circular driveway and it's back here in what looks like woods in the satellite imagery. I also have a photo looking south from the tracker location. But in terms of visibility, we're totally in the clear. If anyone has any questions on this one, besides obviously the concrete.
What is the height again of this
So-
one at its highest angle?
At its highest angle, it's 20 feet. Generally, it'll be less than that because it will be at more of a tilt following the sun.
Now,
And
do these tilt left and right as well as be size up and down?
Correct. Yes.
Right. Just out of curiosity, that's all.
Yep. It's all hydraulics. But yeah, they'll tilt, follow the sun all day. And then if there's a storm, they automatically go into protection mode, which is totally horizontal.
And will that height change, do you expect, with the helical pile?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Do the hydraulics have to be lubricated?
The hydraulics have to be, yeah, so we have semi-regular maintenance. But there's a big hydraulic tank, so it does its own thing. There's definitely some maintenance every once in a while, but there's a big hydraulic tank on it,
So
so it
what are
cycles
the
in.
chances of leakage with that tank?
I would say, so I've been working with this is an all earth tracker. I've been seeing this company for a long time. I think they've improved every aspect of their trackers. So I've definitely seen some linkage as just every once in a while on the hose itself, but I've never seen a case where you could tell it leaked on the ground. It was just, there's a small leakage and it's on the hose. The good thing about that is we're alerted really quickly. So if you have to go replace a hydraulic hose, Valley would go out and do that. And this company they will send us parts within a couple days. So
it's got an integral monitoring system?
yep. Yeah, it's got I believe it's a Zigbee connector, integrated with the tracker. Yep,
Okay.
that monitors its behavior, which is
Just out of
separate from
curi-
the electrical.
Just out of curiosity on a tracking system, obviously that costs more than a standard flat system. It's worth the extra cost to pay for this, for the extra solar that will be collected?
Yeah, so the cost value is, there's a lot of factors. But it mostly, depends on the cost of panels. I think these get more popular when panels costs go up. I think mainly there's environmental limitations. So if you have a heavily shaded site, the gains from having a tracker versus a fixed tilt array can be pretty high. And that's generally what I see as one of the determining factors for
Okay.
customers. So if you have a limitations on on the site and you have limitations on space, especially.
So if you've got a wide open space, it's really not worth it to put a tracking system in, you're thinking.
It depends on the customer, but if you have like full irradiance and yeah. Also, I mean, there's definitely some people, they're pretty fun. People like the look of it too, aesthetic.
Okay. I mean, I'm just curious, nothing to do with the application, does it? We're just wondering.
Right.
Okay. Other
I'll
comments?
tell
or
you,
questions?
that's the way to go because the snow's gonna come off it if it stands up like that. You don't have
That's
to worry
right.
about penetrations on your roof and it's sitting sliding off. I mean, you're gonna gain so much more with the snow off of it. I should have thought of it.
So is the hydraulic lubricant fossil based? Is it oil?
Petroleum based?
It's a pretty simple, actually forget the exact, but it's definitely something you can get at auto store. I believe it's petroleum based. Although this is a newer,
kind of ironic, isn't it?
yeah, there's many layers of irony
It's pretty
and energy.
marginal in its percentage, though, I would think.
But it's still ironic.
Okay. Okay, any other questions, comments?
Good.
None? Okay, Jesse, we meet the first and with our next meeting will be the 19th. So if you can get those,
19th.
that post revision design done by then and out to the Mr. Dwyer a couple days in advance, then you should be all set. We can give you an approval on the 19th because there's nothing here that we wouldn't approve.
Understood. Okay. Yep. Sorry about that. I think that was
That's okay.
just a oversight.
Okay,
Thanks.
All right. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Comia.
Hi, board.
Hello.
Hey, Ken.
Hi, everyone. So there were two things that I sent late this afternoon, and I apologize for the lateness. I wasn't expecting to send anything, and more so use this as conversation. But I had, both Kyle and I met with Mr. Bill Rail from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities to kind of see where the conversation went when you met with him in June with regards to the 40R district, and try to suss out any sort of concepts that we could take away and maybe prepare some thought around, particular to maybe looking at a zoning amendment. And so, what was shared was a product of some of the conversation with regards to looking at the area holistically. I wasn't sure, and it wasn't quite clear based on my conversation with him, how the board was looking at a 40R district, if it was specific to that one parcel, or if there was a holistic look. I think what I ended up talking to him about was some of in the past couple of years that I've been working with the board, from a conversation and a grant that we had applied for, the town had applied for, was utilizing Hampshire Mall and the area around Maple Street, thinking about the corridor development. And so kind of throwing that around as a concept. Also, I think in passing, understanding that, you know, the board may have an impression that that there may be an opportunity for some housing development in the area. So with that said, and kind of understanding the nuance of 40R and the possibility of the state reviewing the application favorably, he submitted a map, which I shared with the board, that suggested a boundary. I don't think it was, I haven't had the opportunity to address any sort of particulars as to why he may have looked at those particular sites, other than sharing both what has come out of the master plan process, as well as the history of what you may have applied for in the past with regards to grants, and conversation that the board has had in passing. So with that said, you know, the suggestion for 40R, I know I had suggested to the board that another organization or consultant can work on an application, but I think that in reviewing both the application and reviewing the products that PVPC has done in the past, between Kyle and I and our help with the state, we can prepare an application on behalf of the board, behalf of the town, and work with the town and work with the board in trying to do the community education that I think is probably something that the board will need to understand, because this is a new concept for Hadley, I think, and could be something at the very least, as you approach, maybe looking at a zoning bylaw amendment, something that probably requires some community education.
So Ken, it appears that you're making a little bit of a quantum leap to assume that the planning board is looking at a holistic approach. The question was, how much would we have to expand from, let's face it, the Econo Lodge that we're talking about, to get approval as a designated 40 area? So this leap that if people were listening to us, would assume that the planning board made an effort to zone that whole area for apartments. That is not the intent, I think, that I came away with. But
Nor I.
we knew how small could we go before we would have to bring it before a town meeting. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
What gave you the idea that we wanted to make this quantum leap that Joe Zagranik just suggested?
It wasn't I don't think this is a quantum leap. I think this is understanding based on the conversations that I've heard from the planning board in passing, again, regarding the opportunities for redevelopment of the Hampshire Mall site or sites surrounding that where you have impervious surfaces that are expansive, and also understanding maybe that business model, in addition to the conversations with regards to the housing production plan and looking at looking at density along Route 9. So, you know, if the impression is that it was a quantum leap, I apologize. It's not the intent. It was thinking based on the conversations of the planning board, but also exploring this 40R concept, knowing that suggesting that it's going to be one parcel or a couple of parcels surrounding that might be a challenge in trying to get that approval from the state for that district.
The map that you gave us, Ken, was that something that you talked about, or was that something that the state talked about with you?
This was Mr. Raelt. This
Okay.
came, yeah, this wasn't something that I prepared because I
Okay.
feel like in conversation with the board, this was going to be used as a stepping stone. And it's clear, I think, based on some of the reception that this is a no-go, or at least needs further, maybe some further ironing out, and providing the opportunities for suggesting that there are calculations that would be need to occur, as well as some assurances and some planning on maybe looking at the Econo-Lodge parcel, but as well as some of the abutting parcels.
We don't want to open ourselves up to the possibility of Hadley's population increasing 25% in 3 or 4 years because of this.
Exactly. If you voted, that whole area would be designated as an apartment on the 40R, even though it's requires only 50% on the 40R of the town meeting vote. I don't think you would get it. So I think we have to be more reasonable in our approach. I mean,
The state has to be more reasonable in its approach also. I mean, we're giving a little bit here,
the
quite a
state,
bit, frankly, apartments in Hadley. And, if they're going to say, well, you can't do it, fine, we'll walk away. We can walk
we
away.
walk away, and we can afford to walk away because, yes, we have 11.9% of our housing deemed affordable. It's not that the wolf is at our door and saying we have
No.
to do something. We're looking to expand. That's
Yeah,
what
I would,
appears that if we presented this, that's what the planning board would favor. And I think that is not the impression that I did get.
That's
yeah,
fair.
this gives me the impression of more of a, what I would call legitimate overlay district. And my understanding was that the 40R basically made it legal for us to spot zone. And so we could open up very small, limited parcels and see how that goes before we just open up the barn door.
I think that's definitely fair, and in the conversation that I also got the impression that that's something that has happened in the past, where if you look at other communities and you see individual parcels identified, that is where the town where communities had identified where that type of development could occur. I think in talking to the Mr. Raelt, it also seemed as if those were projects that could be probably not looked upon favorably in the current state of reviewing these. That was an impression that I got with regards to looking at individual parcels, although they have been presented in the past and they have been presented in an application to the state for an approval of that district, that looking at the opportunities for housing in addition to that district, and maybe something with a concerted planning effort, looking at specific parcels, looking at adjacent parcels where you could possibly see some sort of similar denser development in that area, which probably makes sense where you'd want some density in that area, is that was my impression in talking to Mr. Rael.
Now, let me ask a question. Can we, because you were talking with Rails, none of us were involved. This shaded area is obviously considerably large.
Sure.
And I'm doubting that he's saying, or even you would have said the planning board is interested in rezoning the whole area, as much as this is the area that if you were to put other small 40Rs, it would be appropriate, and the state might look favorably upon it.
I think that's good. That's more of a target area to do the smaller, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that was, you know, again, not getting, and maybe this wasn't ready for prime time with the planning board, because of the various comments that I'm receiving as far as, and the comments that are coming from this. But presumably, yeah, if I were working as a town planner and there was a conversation about 40R and where it should be located, presumably knowing that your master plan has identified opportunities for mixed uses in this particular district, I may have chosen initially some of the parcels that have been talked about in the past and that have been identified in the master plan. In addition to, you know, even the efforts of applying for a grant to study such mixed uses in those particular parcels. So, you know, I think the map, it is quite expansive, the boundary, but at the same time, there is no housing development there. So presumably you could imagine, or one could imagine that, you know, if there was a mixed use concept in this area, that there would be a bit more housing being developed in that clustered area.
Okay, that makes a whole lot more sense as opposed to trying to, there was no discussion about rezoning the area. Just if it was to happen, this could be an appropriate area to put a small parcel in.
Sure.
Okay.
The other thing though is obviously the hardship, I think, is explaining to the community and explaining to the town that presumably in this district you're going to have any one of these parcels that have been identified as one where there would, you know, possibly be 40R development.
Now, let's keep on. I've got an agenda here that I'm going to go after. So this would be an appropriate locality based upon public transportation, sidewalks, availability of shopping, within walking distance of all types of shopping, and other amenities relating to those housing needs, if you would. It's not far away from, it's not a mile away or 2 miles away from anything. It's right in the heart of a lot of the amenities that people need to survive. They're within walking distance. Right?
Yes, that's correct. And those are some of the criteria by which 40R is successful, or at least in the application process.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an appropriate assumption and appropriate comments about where it should be located. But it appears that we're being asked to zone the entire area in order to qualify. Well, we should make it clear that if we just would designate a small area, would that be approved? But it sounds like we want to rezone that entire area in order to qualify a little section.
I think like Ken said, this needs, and it's not so much that he presented it to the board prematurely. It's going to be presented to the board sooner or later.
Well,
but it brings active discussion about what would the state want to get something to approve.
well,
And
the state's negotiating here. They're taking a drastic approach here. And just because they say this doesn't mean we have to accept it. We just say no.
I
You know,
absolutely agree with that. We don't
Okay.
have to, we don't have.
You don't have to, you don't have to, you don't even have to do a submission if you don't want to, but you know, they're negotiating hard. They're negotiating hard because they think you're gonna roll over,
I think it's just an
or
opening.
they want you to roll over. Excuse me.
I wouldn't,
It's, we've kind of made our opinions and, but I don't even want to mention the parts of the camels that's coming into our tent because this didn't go over well a few years ago. But the state has been dictating along the MBTA line, you can overrule local zoning with apartments. This and MBTA line and its rail lines in the greater Boston area. I just spoke to somebody in Melrose, and also too, there was a challenge from a community outside of Worcester that are challenging the state regulations too. So to overrule local zoning, but I've said my piece, so I'll keep quiet.
Mark?
Ken, I don't know if you can pull this from your memory banks, but I believe one of your colleagues who gave us a bit of education on 40R, I believe she said that Northampton has done a 40R that had 2 small parcels in it, and they weren't contiguous. They were like, do you recall that? And if so, do you have any recollection if that was hard to get through the state? Or because that was enticing to me that, in her explanation that this was a, for those listening who aren't familiar, in essence, spot zoning is highly frowned upon, if not illegal, but this is kind of a legal way to do it, was what I heard. Maybe
I heard that too, Mark. I heard that too.
and that
Yeah.
way we can, because, you can just imagine the voices on the floor of town meeting counting how many parcels are there and how many units you could pack in there. Obviously, the market wouldn't bear that, but we said when we fought Home Depot, did we expect that Lowe's was going to come right behind it? Like, we have one, why do we need 2? So there's that argument. You're going to hear that it could overbuild apartments and we'll all be ridden out of town.
Yeah, I think that's the case study probably was the Village Hill development in Northampton, and if that's like right off Route 66, the Conway School's there. There's a Beacon. I don't recall what housing development. But it's all mixed use. It's all residential. There is, I think there's a bus that passes by that particular development. So yeah, I mean, I think that if you're looking at the Econo Lodge as, possibly identifying that as a parcel, but also thinking within the context of maybe some other parcels surrounding that, maybe not adjacent, similar to Hospital Hill. I think it was very different than Hadley. You obviously have your commercial corridor. Hospital Hill is not, there isn't much commercial unless you walk downtown to downtown Northampton.
Yeah.
So I think it really truly is how the application, when put forward, crosses off the various things that the state is looking for. I think to the point of both Mike and Joe, you've identified exactly what this is. This is a voluntary approach by the town to examine opportunities for affordable housing and get a smart growth payment by the state for that goes into your coffers.
Is there any room for political pressure here, Ken, from Senator Comerford, or, you know?
The thing is, this is voluntary, so I don't think that this is not something that is forced. Like, if the board really wants to explore having a singular parcel in 40R, then that's, you know, what we can try to approach with.
Well, but I think if our senator got behind us, Senator Comerford, and who's the guy from East Hampton, a rep?
Uh,
But I
Area.
don't think we need to go there is what is,
No?
is what
Okay.
Ken's saying. We have the power because we're not obligated to request a 40R. It's like we've walked up to a car dealership and say, we're thinking about buying a car, and the state came out and said, would you like a Cadillac? And we're like, no.
Well, I don't
The
know, but
other-
if Senator Comerford called and said, hey, my constituents in Hadley want to do a limited 40R, and I think it'd be a really good idea if you guys got behind it. I think that might have some
But the
bearing,
other,
perhaps some wrong.
yeah, sure. I think there's
the other
opportunity.
point that was brought up, Ken, before us, for a proposal on the Bab property about housing, that our sewer capacity is almost maxed out. So obviously, we could not afford a wholesale massive housing development in that area. And so we have to be aware of that too. And if we are doing planning, and we have to make that decision, you know, where we're gonna put the sewer line in, or where will the sewer capacity go? Will it go to Amherst? Well, the Amherst sewer plant is located in Hadley, and it's supposed to be a regional sewer plant, but that wouldn't fly very well, I don't think. We'll see.
And you're exactly right. That is a requirement under this application. The DPW director will need to say the infrastructure has the ability to withstand X amount of units that, you know, could be presumably developed in this particular area. So understanding that, using the calculations that are required by the state, using the various criteria that the state wants in the application, there are these other questions that are policy questions that the town may need to consider. What I will say too is, obviously, I think this is fresh for the board and for me, because this is what, you know, we had interacted with when the ZBA denied the 40B permit. So, you know, that probably was where the conversation was going to go. This can work along Route 9. I think that there probably are some other areas that maybe the town center by the town hall has been identified in the master plan as having some mixed uses, village center type zoning. So those are opportunities. But this is, you know, just bringing forth ideas and concepts that are under 40R, which suggest mixed uses, some affordability requirement in the housing, and you know, takes advantage of the location as well as the amenities and the infrastructure that are, you know, service or supporting that particular proposed development.
We just don't want the 40B to become a Trojan horse for Hadley. We bring it in and we don't know what's gonna come out.
You mean
Mr. Fennell,
40R?
you've been sitting there. You can hop right in here and say something. I mean, geez, everybody else is.
I
Mike-
appreciate it, Mike. I'm still learning quite a bit, and I do appreciate everybody's thoughtful contributions. It's a very active discussion. Thank you, but I have nothing to contribute at this time.
Okay, well, I just want to earn your salary, so you at least you did.
I don't know if you guys can remind me, I don't have my notes in front of me when we got our education on the 40R, but how much leverage do we give away once we set that up? Is that our projects by right, or do we still have site plan approval process?
There definitely is both of those types of permitting. I think the way that the zoning bylaw reads or would read is that you probably would have certain types of development in that particular overlay that presumably would be by right. and some that would require site plan approval. So, you know, it's up to the board and the town through the adoption of a zoning bylaw, what that may look like. There are requirements for a suggestion of design review board or some sort of design review of this type of development. So presumably you'd also utilize a review process that included, you know, a
Is
design.
that what you're referring to, Mark? That's a good question, but if we expand on that question, could we dictate, as the zoning board of appeals could have dictated to the Econo Lodge, who would be allowed? Would it be veterans allowed? Would it be elderly? And would it be in perpetuity? What kind of distinctions could we put on the approval or non-approval? So,
According to what I know of that 40R, you can negotiate some reasonable things, but you can't be too overpowering. So, you know, a lot of it would depend on what the developer is amenable to, if you would. But we would give up a lot of right to dictate too much. And Mr. Fennell, you'll notice we have a very reserved board. People are afraid to say their piece.
well, that's,
Understandable. It's
Venting sarcasm.
Jim, are we through with this topic? Because I just wanted to talk to Ken about something that I presented to the board a couple of meetings ago. We were gonna sleep on it, and
Just one more thing, Ken offered to put a proposal together, an application together. If we wanted to go in that direction. I don't think we want to decide until Bill's here, but correct, Ken? You were willing to take the bull by the horns.
Yeah, I mean, I think through this process and navigating with the board, as you've done in the past, when I've worked with, you know, either a subset of the board through bylaw writing or other types of planning initiatives, it's something that we can do. The suggestion would be to not utilize your planning board funds, but rather apply for a grant in the new year through district local technical assistance through the PVPC, where that could possibly fund this type of work, in addition to maybe some other grants that are out there that definitely would be eligible to, you know, complete this type of work.
And it seems like it would be a good idea to have the town initiate the 40R instead of a developer bringing it to us. That would have a different slant to it, a certain bias.
Agree.
Yeah, and like I said, Mark, I think having worked with Jim and you, I think for some of the stormwater, particularly working with Jim, and Jim having, you know, been part of some of our conversations with the battery energy storage, knowing that you do have the skill set and also the abilities to kind of navigate some of these planning concepts, that you're right. I think the town through its planning board, through the planning board members, can definitely take on this work, rather than having a developer just say, here's a suggested 40R plan. And then right after that, here's the development plan that we have, you know, assuming that you get that passed. So understanding that this allows the town and the planning board to really examine what it truly wants, relying on your master plan, relying on some previous planning documents, and obviously your institutional history of what has worked in the past and what has not, and then try to navigate a zoning change through that lens, but also knowing, as Joe pointed out, the state is one, it has, through its housing choice, it's an ease of approving this. It's at a majority rather than a 2/3 because it is 40R. And the state has allowed for a change in those voting requirements for those related to housing. certain ones. So being mindful of that too. It's just all these moving pieces with regards to housing development in the Commonwealth.
Thanks, Ken.
If we're close to
Your
closing this,
comment about, you're up, Joe.
Oh, yes. So Ken, 2 meetings ago, we had a lawyer come in and he beat us up pretty good about trying to get the money back for, he was trying to make a payment in lieu of building an affordable unit under a subdivision. And he beat us up pretty good, I thought, and that we have nothing except this one statement. Calculated from regional construction sales reports. Now, I think we have to have something a little bit more concrete. And I propose a substitution, that being the price of building lots in Hadley. It's just throwing it out there. For example, right now, a standard building lot is about 140,000. But in the high-end section, or in Shattuck Road, Bayberry and Colony Drive, they're up 165, 170. On East Street Common, where they're included in the cost of the housing, talking with the accountant, it's anywhere between 14% and 20% of the house is for the lot itself. So we could come up with some concrete numbers that would be more applicable to Hadley. Does that make sense to anybody on the board, or should I just put this to bed? And Ken, we don't have to make a decision on this tonight, but just think it over and see if any other town has come up with something like this.
I will resend out the work that the board had done in kind of talking about this concept. I think, Joe, you've identified a set of data that has been identified in the past. I think we worked with a calculation that Mike was working off of initially when we talked about this 2 years ago. So I think contemplating that and seeing how that may fit in with the data that is accessible to the board, knowing that the board would probably change this number every year based on the market.
Sure.
Having it written that way, I don't think that it is out of this world. Like, I think that makes sense to me, based on the data being easily accessible, based on your assessor data, based on coming up with what that criteria is going to look like. You know, I think the conversation is always going to be, we've adopted this new rule and that has to be adopted by the planning board every year. What about these previously approved plans, and how are you going to negotiate or navigate some of those conversations with the developers, you know, that may have done business in town before? And I think that's just, yeah, you know, I identifying that as something based on, you know, that you provided from the previous developer. So I,
The
But
problem is that, excuse me, go ahead.
But it works well with the transfer of development rights when somebody doesn't have sufficient parking. They can more or less buy some open space to counteract that. And we have the numbers available every year, and we almost have these numbers available every year from the assessor's office. So that's just trying to make it simpler. But
Well,
just-
you know,
food for thought. Now, would this have to be a zoning change, or could we put it in rules and regulations as an addendum? Do you know, Jim?
Rules and regulation.
That would be rules and regulations? So it wouldn't be that difficult. Okay.
And we could
Should I-
adopt it if, I mean, it depends how we word it. The worst we would have to do is adopt a new one every year.
Well, I don't want to make these decisions, and we can't make it over Zoom, because every time we start talking about legalese, Bill Dwyer used to take out his legal card and just slide it in front of us.
This is specifically written to be a rule and regulation.
Okay. Thank you.
If you got $150,000 building lot, you can put a $400,000 house on it, or you can put a $1.2 million house on it, okay?
Well,
So,
wait a
I
minute,
don't
Mike.
think we
We're
wanna-
not
I don't think
talking-
we wanna-
Wait a minute, Top Stein, you're talking hypothetical to make my argument seem out of whack. I'm talking about specifics in Hadley. So I have the numbers. I mean, you could do anything you want, but what have the majority of the building lots and housing costs have gone for?
My point is that it has nothing to do with the cost of the building lot. It should be based upon what the cost of the house is, including the building lot.
Well, we can argue that all day long. but the thing
Exactly.
is,
So that's right.
with- with-
I just throw it out there. If anybody,
with Joe's idea, it's pretty much, if you would, it's a fixed number that doesn't vary greatly. You're right. You can take a $150,000 lot and you can put a mansion on it. You can put a 1,500 square foot ranch on it, or whatever you want to do, and the price will vary greatly. But that is neither here nor there from that point of view, in that the price, basing the affordable housing fund contribution upon the building lot itself will give us a pretty fixed number to go forward with in almost every development, future development as it comes into town, as is proposed. Yeah, they could put,
Any development over 5, 6, that's the problem with the inclusionary zoning bylaw, kicks in at 6.
that is something that we can also address, in that if you're 6 or over, you contribute accordingly. We can amend the zone bylaw so that if it's 1 to 5, it would be a number based on a number of lots. So this would-
Percentage of the lots. If it's 1 lot, it's 20%, 2 lots, 40%, 3 lots, 40, up to 100.
Whatever the numbers
Yeah.
may be, we could,
Got it.
I would be in, I think we should amend once we agree upon a calculation. I think we should amend the 1 to 5 in the zone bylaw to also make those lots contribute something.
Right, otherwise.
that
you're gonna
way-
get just a bunch
That
of
way,
five.
it's the pain is shared across all of them.
I provided the board an example, I think, of 2 communities out in the Cape that had utilized under 6. And there's a fraction of what would need to be paid into a fund. So I'll recirculate that too.
Okay.
But yeah. So I think the concept of that, Jim, is not unique. It's something that has passed muster and has been adopted by towns, across the Commonwealth. So
Does the AG have to approve it? Or whoever approves stuff?
that would be
It's
the bylaw.
But if it's a zone bylaw, the AG would have to approve it. But if you base it upon reasonableness, I doubt they're gonna have heartburn with it. We're not being the biggest, the old, arbitrary and capricious thing. So. And housing being what it is, they're a bit more open.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ken.
You're under fire tonight, Ken, and you did a hell of a job.
Well, I have
was-
such a good board to bounce ideas off of, and you definitely have brought.
You're good.
We're not beating up Ken, we're having, we're
Right.
having lively discussion, but nobody's directly
No.
accusing him of anything too much.
I wanted to clarify that after the last subject, that you should not feel attacked just because we went, "Wah!"
We
That's
do
what
that
happened
with each
when-
other.
What happened before the cat, before you hit the cat with a car?
Just,
So
just remember, we don't want a Trojan horse.
If I could just take one more, what, you know, building on Joe's idea, what if we said something like, you know, build that unit or payment in lieu equal to 60% of the average sales cost of the other units? You know, is that reasonable?
I would say, if you want to propose that, Mark, put it down on what you're proposing so we can look at it as opposed to just shooting from the hip like this.
Yeah, okay.
That's what Joe did, so we had a chance to look at it and try to digest it.
Yeah,
You know, I think we're willing to look at anything,
yeah.
just to use a number like that. It's like, well, what does that mean? You know, put a little formula, put a little explanation together and email it to us.
Yeah. I mean, I could see the downside to it is you wouldn't know what the average sales price is until everything else is sold. So you wouldn't be able to, you know, figure out if you were going to build it or not until you had everything else built. Maybe that's how they work. But yeah, I'll put it in an email.
when I recirculate those documents, you'll see that the board contemplated a calculation such as that, and we provided an example and utilizing some suggested data as the example. So I think, you know, understanding that it would probably need to fill out this logical, you know, the logical numbers and the data that you'd use, that probably will make it easier to present in such a way.
Yeah, I was just thinking if you tied it to the average cost of that developer's units, whether they're doing $1 million or $400,000, that would then regulate it so that it wasn't unfair. You know, but
Yeah,
okay.
I agree.
Yep.
At one point in time, we were talking about having a fee based on the sales price, and just thinking more and more about that is not workable because every owner has a different cost basis.
Right.
In some cases, the cost basis could be higher than what you sell the house for. So,
Ken, have you heard anything more in this from the state or anybody in PVPC heard anything? Because I haven't heard anything lately. That there was some talk in the State House of imposing a surcharge on real estate transactions similar to CPA for real estate to be going towards affordable housing. I know there was a few towns that were trying to pass legislation. Then the legislature says they were going to try to do something possibly statewide, and then I said heard nothing more.
Jim, you were, as you were saying that, I said, I know what he's going to ask. And you asked exactly what I thought you're going to ask. I took a look at that, and it seems as if there is still they're still working on legislation. There's been no approval of that. I think the advocates are there for that. And there's a lot of advocacy around that. So I think it's still to be continued as to.
We could take it out of the bylaw, not have to worry about it.
oh,
So, but anyways, wait and see. Okay.
So with the other document that I shared with the board, I'm glad Tom is here from the building department, is to share that permitting guide that we kind of had a last draft. I will just make sure that the building department just reviews the most common permits and provide any sort of additional documentation for inclusion into the permitting guide. But as what I shared with you, that's probably at its most complete version, other than, you know, maybe some input that will clarify from the building department. We'll include the schedule of fees as much as we can. I think though that sometimes that gets changed, and it's a matter of you know, how the town may want to look at having fees that change often included into that document. I also know that based on the last conversation we had, the town had prepared some sort of document that suggested there's a component of permitting So, and I don't think Bill sent that to me yet, but I just like to make sure that if there's duplication of efforts, that we want to make sure that this particular guide is for this purpose and that particular guide is for that purpose.
What the town has prepared, or the board, was actually being prepared by Jane Devon Smith of the Board of Selectmen. I think that would work well in conjunction with the permitting guide you prepared.
Right.
Because one is kind of yours is probably a 1,000-foot view, and hers was probably more of a 10,000-foot view to follow. Like, this board does this board does this board does this, whereas your guide is more specific, particularly to residential building and commercial building between the planning board and the building department.
And some of the other land use boards, yeah.
Yeah,
Dee
so I worked with Jane on that too. And so right now we have, it's like a trifold pamphlet. And we're hoping to have every office have it available. So people will readily know just by reading this pamphlet if they need a specific a sign permit, for instance, but they need to go to the planning board. So, there's all those different things. There's all the different departments, what their kind of little requirements are. I can send you over to a sample of that so you can see it, because we've made some other different changes on it, but we haven't finalized it.
Great. Thanks, Dee Dee.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, so in addition to the permitting guide, some of the other work that the board talked about at the last meeting is unearthing your various policies that you've passed through rules and regulations and preparing a document that puts everything together in one document. I was trying to go through because I know that Bill had sent, maybe a couple of years ago, all of these various documents, and I'm still trying to figure out where in my folders it exists. But I may ask Bill for some, to take a look at that again and see how we can utilize that. But I guess if the board is okay with this understanding, and we'll have the next time I see you, we'll talk about whether or not you want to continue 40R and apply for a grant. I'll work with the planning board in the town to put something together, do that. The rules and regulations were also identified on your list of things to do. I don't think that you have any zoning amendments that you are asking us to look at the moment. So I think just kind of knowing what our plan of action in the next couple of months is to put everything together.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like that would be good. At our next meeting, we should put a little more into the 40R to see which way we want to try to proceed.
Sure.
Leave it at that for the time being. Okay, thank you, Ken. Set our next meeting for first meeting in October 3rd.
Should be okay, yeah.
Okay. Right now, that date is wide open, so that should be a good one. So, okay.
And is it possible for you to send that permitting guide as a PDF?
Yes, I can do that.
Because different platforms might mess up with the formatting of the images. You've got some, word art in there that.
Oh yeah, I will send that as a PDF. Thanks for that, Mark.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments for Ken or Mr. Fennell? William. Well, Mr. Fennell, do you prefer to go by William or Bill?
I actually go by Kyle.
You like Kyle? Well,
Yes,
that's
sir.
fine.
Appreciate it.
Okay. We aim to please.
I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ken, for your edification or our edification.
Putting up with us again.
You're quite welcome. I enjoy talking to you all.
And we enjoy talking at you.
No.
Anybody else have anything? Any other planning board business? I have nothing. We voted to pay the payroll, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Including the raise, yeah, we got that in.
Look at big raise, yeah?
Yeah.
Okey doke, I have nothing else.
You picking me up, Zeke?
Yes. Move
Okay,
to adjourn.
Thanks, Tommy.
good night,
Motion-
everybody.
mo-
Take it
wait,
easy.
before you go,
Stay,
motion to
stay
adjourn.
cool. Stay cool.
Second.
Motion to adjourn, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Tom, thank you, Ken, thank you, Kyle, and thank you, Alex. Good night, all.
Good night.